Have you ever heard of a meal so strange, so stubborn against decay, that it kept desperate men alive while death circled them at sea? Picture this: a wooden ship groaning under the weight of heat and hunger. The sun beats down on the deck, the sails flap like weary lungs, and deep in the hold, barrels of salted meat and rock-hard biscuits wait, not as food, but as salvation. For pirates, the sea wasn't just an enemy. It was a slow executioner. Storms and cannons could kill you fast. But hunger? Hunger was patient. It waited. It whispered. Imagine biting into a biscuit so hard it could shatter teeth. It looks harmless, pale, dry, nearly immortal. But the moment it touches your tongue, you taste mold, salt, and something that once crawled. Around you, every man chews in silence, pretending the crunch is just more flour. Not weevils alive inside the dough. They called it hardtack or molar breakers. Some soaked it in rum or seawater to soften it. Others didn't bother. Because there was no choice, eat or die. Pirates knew treasure could be stolen, but food was power. Without it, no legend survived long enough to be cursed. Salt became their first weapon against death. Whole sides of beef were buried under mountains of it, until the flesh turned stiff as leather. Fish were packed in crystals so thick that even flies avoided them. What came out of those barrels wasn't food. It was endurance itself, tasteless, gray, and nearly indestructible. In the galley, smoke filled the air. Strips of fish hung above a low fire, the haze wrapping the meat like a ghost. When the men ate it, they tasted not flavor, but survival. Smoke, vinegar, and salt were their trinity, each one buying another day before rot returned. And still, the ocean always found a way back in. When food spoiled, men whispered of omens. A barrel gone black meant the voyage was cursed. Some swore they could hear chewing at night, sounds that didn't belong to any man still alive. Others claimed to see ghostly shapes near the hold, as if the dead were feeding first. But superstition had a practical truth. Spoiled food did kill. One voyage recorded how salted pork turned black before the first month was over. The crew accused their captain of greed, of packing too quickly in the heat. Weeks later, their ship was found drifting, barrels split open, the stench of rot heavy in the air. Not a single soul remained aboard. Even now, historians argue, did they starve or turn on each other when the salt failed? Salt, smoke, vinegar, they were only the beginning. Pirates became masters of desperate innovation. In tropical islands, they buried meat beneath sand to draw out moisture. In icy waters, they packed food in snow. Some soaked spoiled beef in vinegar so strong it burned the tongue but hid the rot. They didn't call these recipes. They were spells, rituals against time. Rum became medicine. Mixed with water, it turned to grog, half illusion, half salvation. The alcohol masked the taste of decay and kept bacteria at bay. Every man received a ration. Too weak, and they mutinied. Too strong, and they lost control. But balanced right, it kept them human. For a while. Grog wasn't just a drink. It was a promise that each man shared the same bitterness, the same fight to survive. A captain who watered it down risked his life. A man's loyalty could be bought with many things, but at sea, nothing mattered more than a fair drink. When barrels ran low, desperation turned to invention. Some men filtered stew through cloth, catching worms and larvae, calling it washing the rot. Others boiled spoiled meat, skimming off the floating insects before eating what was left. A few crushed coral and shells, building makeshift filters to make foul water drinkable. They knew they were swallowing sickness, but they swallowed anyway. The ocean watched, indifferent. And yet, there were moments, brief, fragile, when life felt victorious. When rain filled barrels with fresh water, or when a crew caught a wild pig on an island, they celebrated like kings. Pirates called it a feast, though the food was simple. Salted stew, maybe a slice of fruit, maybe one more ladle of rum. They sang, they laughed, they forgot the smell of rot for one night. But food wasn't only sustenance, it was politics, it was power. A captain who rationed too harshly risked rebellion. One who hoarded the good barrels could wake up with a knife in his throat. More than one mutiny began not with gold, but with hunger. One story tells of a ship where the men discovered untouched barrels of salted pork hidden beneath the captain's cabin floor. While they starved, he feasted. By dawn, he was dead. The sea accepted his body the same way it accepted the spoiled food, without judgment, without mercy. Some islands became legends themselves, not for treasure, but for what grew on them. Sailors whispered about hidden coves with citrus trees and freshwater springs. Crews who knew these places guarded their maps with more jealousy than gold. A grove of oranges could mean survival. A spring could mean a voyage completed. The Morning Star was one such ship. Starved and half-mad, her crew found a forgotten island heavy with fruit. They feasted for 3 days, laughing as if they'd conquered heaven. Weeks later, another ship passed by. The Morning Star was gone. Only broken barrels and blackened fruit rinds remained. Some say the land took back what it gave. Food was life, but it was also the boundary between man and madness. In the dark, hunger twisted reality. A man could chew leather straps or wood shavings and swear they tasted of bread. Another could eat in silence, hearing the whispers of drowned sailors in his mind. The sea took their sanity long before it took their bodies. But pirates weren't fools. They studied survival the way others studied war. Blackbeard, remembered for terror and smoke curling from his beard, was meticulous about supplies. He raided ships not just for gold, but for flour, salted fish, and rum. His legend survived not only because he was ruthless, but because he understood the simplest truth of the ocean. You can't rule the sea if you can't feed your men. Deep in the hold, barrels were sacred. They were lifelines, and sometimes tombs. To protect them, pirates charred the insides with fire, sealing the wood like armor. That same trick would later be used for whiskey barrels, but on a pirate ship, it wasn't for flavor. It was for survival. Some captains dropped silver coins into the water casks, believing silver kept rot away. They were right. Centuries later, science would prove silver kills bacteria. But back then, it felt like magic. Pirates joked they'd found the only treasure that could actually save them. Every barrel carried its own ritual. Some captains sealed them with prayers. Others sprinkled blood or rum across the lids, calling it a baptism against decay. You might laugh, but when a voyage lasted months without sickness, no one dared mock the superstition. Yet, sometimes the magic failed. Heat warped the barrels. Mold spread like ivy. The food turned black. And when that happened, even the bravest men heard death in the groaning wood. There are stories of ghost ships found adrift, their decks eerily clean, their galleys still warm with the scent of cooking, half-eaten biscuits scattered beside cold cups of grog. No bodies, no struggle, just silence. Some said it was madness, others said it was the curse of the sea itself, that once food became too foul, it claimed not only the body, but the soul. One French privateer wrote that he boarded a deserted vessel and found barrels of meat so rotten even rats wouldn't touch them. He swore the smell haunted him for weeks. And yet, what frightened him most was not the rot. It was that something had eaten before them. Even when science failed, superstition thrived. Crews spoke of food keepers, men chosen to guard the barrels, chanting old prayers before sealing them. They carried charms, seashells, and tiny idols said to protect against famine. Some swore these rituals worked. Others said belief itself was the only thing that kept madness away. Pirates learned to trick not just nature, but themselves. They used tobacco to kill the taste of decay. They soaked rancid meat in citrus to fool the nose. They pretended the crawling crunch in their biscuits was sand. They lied to their tongues and lived another day. In the end, the sea always won. Every voyage began with barrels full of hope, sealed in tar and prayer. Every voyage ended with emptiness, the hollow thud of wood rolling in the dark. That sound meant despair. It meant time had run out. Even now, centuries later, the ocean remembers. Some sailors say that in the stillness before dawn, you can hear it. The faint sound of chewing carried on the wind, like teeth grinding against biscuit, like the ghosts of those who refuse to starve quietly. The great mysteries of the sea are not always about storms or battles. Sometimes they are about hunger, about men who fought decay and lost. The sword may have made pirates famous, but it was the meal that made them human. Every salted bite, every mouthful of grog, every cursed biscuit. They were all tiny rebellions against death. So imagine standing there, the last biscuit in your hand. Would you eat it, knowing it's crawling, knowing it's cursed, just to see another sunrise? Or would you throw it to the sea and let the silence take you? Because sometimes the ocean doesn't kill you. It just waits until you eat.